This is Optimal Relationships Daily, episode 1911. Thoughts on Relationships by Tynan of Tynan.com. Hello, everybody, and thanks a lot for joining me for another episode of Optimal Relationships Daily. I'm Greg Audino, your host and narrator. So glad that you've tuned in today. We're going to be sharing a post from Tynan, who we've been reading from all across the network for many years now. His work is featured especially often on Optimal Living Daily, so be sure to tune in there if you haven't yet. But for now, let's hear his thoughts on relationships in his article entitled Thoughts on Relationships, as we optimize your life. Thoughts on Relationships by Tynan of Tynan.com. I get asked a lot to write about relationships, probably because I used to be involved in pickup, and it seems strange to some that I am now married. Though from my perspective, getting married is an obvious outcome of getting good at picking up and dating. I'm always a bit hesitant to write about it, because relationships are so complex and individual. While there's a lot of blanket advice that could be given on how to walk up to someone and start a conversation, there's a lot less that's universally applicable in a relationship. But I'll give it a shot anyway. And all of this comes with a major caveat that I'm going to be generalizing for the sake of making this applicable to the widest number of people, which is to say, for a traditional male and female relationship with stereotypical gender roles. Some of it may apply to people in other kinds of relationships, and other parts may not. One big piece of advice, which I assume applies to every type of relationship, is that an absolute necessity for any good relationship is an environment of open, non-judgmental communication. Relationships are complex enough without having severed communication lines. From the very beginning of the relationship, you should be communicating what you like, don't like, and expect. To do anything else is disrespectful. I travel for most of the year, so any time I would date someone, I would make it really clear that that was my lifestyle. If I say, "No, I'm thinking about not traveling as much," I'm setting the relationship up for failure. It's always much better to get these things out early. Be honest and open to rejection. This also includes things that come up within the relationship. If you don't like how your girlfriend acts when she's around your friends, then you should bring it up. It doesn't mean that she has to change or that you need to accept it, but there's a discussion that needs to be had. People very often are afraid to offend their partner, so they let things fester instead. Trust that your partner is mature enough to hear your perspective without freaking out. This, of course, goes two ways. If your partner brings up a concern, you must address it calmly every single time. Never engage in confrontation. You can be upset, but you must communicate with compassion. If you don't, you won't have the opportunity to solve the next problem. You must also understand your partner's perspective as clearly as possible, even if you don't relate to it. It's one thing to disagree and understand, and another to disagree and think that they're an idiot. Ask questions without assigning blame by saying things like, "Interesting, I would never think about it that way. What makes you see it that way?" If your partner is not open to these sorts of conversations, they're probably not ready for a real relationship. At the same time, don't bring every tiny thing to your partner. If all of your conversations are based around misunderstandings and resolving tiny things, you don't have a very robust social life. It's sort of like medicine. You don't want to be popping pills constantly. But if you're really sick, you want to be able to take medicine. Make sure to keep an active life outside of your relationship too. You can't be your partner's entire world, and you don't want them to be yours. If you're both having fresh experiences, that's fresh oxygen being drawn into the relationship. You will, or at least should, appreciate your partner even more when you're around other people. Never take your partner for granted. When you do, you forget what's so great about them and begin to hallucinate that you could easily replace them with someone exactly the same, except with one fewer problem. For the same reason, never let them take you for granted. Make them feel secure, but challenge them. That's a fine line that requires you to let them know you are there for them no matter what, but also encourages them to grow and be even better. I love the book 5 Love Languages. It teaches you to give your partner what they want, not what you want. I did all of that wrong for years. In the same way that you want to make sure your effort in your work life will move your business forward, you want to make sure that what you put into the relationship is moving it forward. Don't do elaborate acts of service if all she wants is quality time. Don't focus on quality time, but starve her from affirmations if those are what's important to her. I'm lucky to be in a great marriage with someone who puts in just as much work as I do and is also an excellent communicator and does all of the things on this list. I wish the same good fortune for you, and you can maximize your chances of receiving it if you embody these principles. You just listened to the post titled Thoughts on Relationships by Tynan of Tynan.com. One of the OLD network's core values is helping you to keep your mind sharp, right? Well, I've been leveling up my focus with Word Collect, which is a free word puzzle app with over 2,000 levels. Word Collect gets harder as you get better, so it's a fun and challenging way to keep your brain sharp and grow your vocabulary. I highly recommend you guys give this fun and addicting brain game a try. And right now, Word Collect is offering you 2,500 coins and 500 gems when you download and play. And those coins help. You'll need them when you're having a hard time reaching the next level. Personally, I have been there a few times, and I'm thankful that they made it easier for me to keep going, because I really don't want to stop playing. After all, the more big words I know, the better I sound on this show, right? So stop mindlessly scrolling through social media and keep your mind sharp. Just go to the Apple or Google store and search for Word Collect. So if you're like me and you want to get fit with your mind and body, download Word Collect for free today. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning and shopping to deliver everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right at home. They do the hard part, and you get to take the credit. Not bad. And a new season calls for new meals. HelloFresh has a fresh fall lineup of delicious dinners and more to choose from. Take your pick from 40 weekly recipes that suit your lifestyle, from veggie to family-friendly to fit and wholesome. And my favorite part, HelloFresh is actually significantly less expensive than both takeout and grocery shopping. So HelloFresh has managed to save me time, health, and a little moolah too. So go to HelloFresh.com/50optimal and use code 50optimal for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Go to HelloFresh.com/50optimal and use code 50optimal for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. All right, thanks a lot to Tynan for this one. Like it or not, he clearly understands the nuances of relationships from both his pickup days to now being happily married. And it's refreshing to see someone acknowledge the complexities of relationships. Especially when the world wants to throw a lot of one-size-fits-all guidebooks at you, which by now I hope you realize is the opposite of what we're trying to do here at ORD. But let's talk about one specific part of this article, I think what really characterized it all, something that comes up a lot, that being the importance of open communication. We really can't reiterate this enough. Surely, communication changes and perhaps feels as if it's more important to emphasize as a relationship progresses. But like Tynan said, even in the beginning, it's important to be transparent. Like if you're perpetually traveling the world in Tynan's case. This gets us into the habit of being open, which is great to start at the beginning when the stakes are low. It teaches our partners about who we really are, which positions us for more honesty from the get-go. And of course, it accelerates and/or increases the likelihood of building trust with one another, as well as being vulnerable with one another. I could go on and on about communication, guys, of course, but we would need a whole separate show for that. So I will leave it there for today. Thank you so much for coming and making another episode possible, especially over the weekend when I know there are so many fun ways you could be spending your time. With that said, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Be sure to come on back tomorrow for both our regularly scheduled episode and our weekly bonus episode happening every Sunday. That's where your optimal life awaits.